Howdy y'all, this is me, Chris, and this is my first video on my smart home, which is going to be very smart and very useful, and I'm just starting it out from scratch. So the backstory is I moved into a new apartment, and this is finally my opportunity to actually build this thing, which I've been wanting to do for, I think, more than 6 years. 6 years I've just started, smart home. I built a couple things back when I was living with my parents in my room, but none of them were really production grade or anything that would like a proper smart home. It was just a fun gimmick, But now I'm in my new apartment, and it's a dope place, and it deserves all the smart home it can get, and the best smart home it can get. And I deserve the best smart home I can get. So I'm going to build one. That's the plan. I'm going to build one. I'm going to link down below my blog where I already talked about it a couple times of what it's going to be. There's a lot of things changed ever since I typed that down, which was the latest one was yesterday, but even since then, things changed. No, not really, but yeah. And long story short, today's video's topic is a server, my smart home server, right? That is today's video's topic. And my current plans were, my previous plans were to run everything in on a Raspberry Pi. Am I a lot? I've been noticing that. Anyways, to run everything on a Raspberry Pi in Docker. But the problem with that is anyways, I'm gonna build everything in Docker because I just don't like this. What I've had before was managing servers, very pet type of servers, very pet type servers. I don't like that. I'm a cloud engineer now. I don't want to have to do anything with pet servers. No, do not like that. Do not like that. Although it's inevitable that at some point some server is going to be a pet, because that's just, that's how it is. But so far I've been thinking about having a Raspberry Pi as a server. But turns out that it is not enough. It's not capable enough, because first and foremost it's ARM, not x86, which limits a lot of things. Secondly, the solutions that are on Raspberry Pi or the software that has been written, the Docker containers, just the software that has been written for Pi, a lot of times is not production grade, or maybe it needs a lot of petting. Oof. But yes, that is technically what it is. It's a pet server, and it requires you to pet it, because otherwise it's going to break. So I don't like that. I don't like doing that. I do not like doing that. And I've noticed that a lot of the things that I would like to build custom, that are these softwares already exist for them. For example, Time Machine Docker images for the Raspberry Pi. It doesn't work. It doesn't really work. I mean, it kind of works with a lot of petting, but it doesn't really work. I don't want to do this. I don't want to have to be petting this server every day or every week, or just things break. I want a production grade setup. And a Raspberry Pi, unfortunately, at this scale, of all the things that I would like to run on it, it's not enough anymore. Because if I were to have, let's say, 4 Raspberry Pis, and 3 of them would be dedicated, and 1 would be just the remaining whatever, one dedicated to Home Assistant, 1 dedicated to my SMB file shares, 1 dedicated to some other stuff, that's a different story. But I don't see the point in that, because for $200, which 4 Raspberry Pis actually do cost nowadays, for $200 you can get just any server. You know what I mean? Just an actual mini server. And so that's what I need now, an actual mini server. And I've just been thinking of how to make that happen. I was torn. I really wanted to go AMD, but it's not financially. This doesn't make sense now, because I want to build a proper AMD setup with a good AMD CPU that doesn't use a lot of power, a lot of electricity, that would also not break the bank, and that is also compatible with Unraid, because I'm going to be running Unraid on it. So there's just a lot of variables that need a lot of work to research, and then it actually is going to cost a bit more money than what I just want to throw on the problem right now. So yeah, that's what I'm going to build now. I think is an older generation Intel-based based computer, like a home server. Probably just going to get something very cheap, maybe one of these office computers for $50 from eBay, because they work. They don't use a lot of power. They work. They're x86. They're older Intel i3 or i5 generation CPUs. Pretty good. 4 cores, hyper-threaded. They got RAM, disk, whatever. They can do the job, and they're very cheap. So that's my idea. Maybe my brother came up with this. He told me about this. That's probably what's going to happen. It don't feel right. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right to start the project with something like that, because I've been known to fall into these things where I don't actually commit that much work and that much. If I don't commit a lot of money to something, then I'm not gonna care about it that much. So that's also a thing. But also I just want to spend a lot of money on cool shit, so that's also a thing. Yeah, long story short, I'm definitely gonna get a home server, because Raspberry Pis, as much as I would love them, as much as I would love everything in Docker, properly, modern, not having a very slow, very pet server, it's not at that state. A Raspberry Pi is not at that. I love them dearly. They started my tech career 100%. Without a Raspberry Pi, I wouldn't be a cloud engineer today. So yeah, I love them, but this is where the top limit of a Raspberry Pi is, of the Raspberry Pi setup is. Which is crazy if you think about it, because this is where it tops out. Everything else you could use it for, kinda. If you just want one Nextcloud, don't run Nextcloud on a Raspberry Pi. Don't run Nextcloud on a Raspberry Pi. It doesn't work. Just trust me, it doesn't work. Especially not in Docker. Yeah, where the fuck was I? I'm just rambling. Home server, it's going to be an Intel-based, something very cheap. And I'm going to run Unraid on it for those. Let me actually show you my current setup. Let me actually show you. So, first and foremost, we got Siri right here, HomePod Mini. Just got it the day before. Just my lens for the camera, 70mm router. Okay, this is a replacement router because I got this one, and I've realized I've had a lot of problems with the previous one, because sometimes the TV would just literally not. What is happening to the TV? It would just literally not. It has connection. Shout out, by the way. It has connection, but there's no data flowing between the router and the TV. And I couldn't figure out what the fuck was happening. So I just ordered a replacement for that. And I'm really hoping that it won't happen again. It hasn't. It's been 2 days. It hasn't. But why is my white balance so... Well, that's all right. Router. It's a $40. It costs $40. And I'm not sure if it's going to be able to handle all the smart devices in the home. We'll see. We'll see later. This is a good one, though, for right now, and we'll see later. I'm honestly surprised that there's no... Between the very cheap and the very expensive, every single router is TP-Link. Every single router in the mid-range is a fucking TP-Link router. Why? Netgear, Linksys, why? Where are you? Where are you in the mid-range router market? Why? Every single router in the mid-range, mid-price is TP-Link. What the fuck, dude? And I'm not necessarily a fan of it. I like you, though. Anyways, here's the Raspberry Pi. Right in there, you can't see much, but yeah, there's an external hard drive connected to it with a Chinese case. It's running, networked to the router on LAN, of course, because let's not do Wi-Fi when we can. Yeah. And then a mini PC later. The ultimate goal with the AMD build, is a very sleek case that acts as, it's a beautiful PC. It's a beautiful home piece. That's what I want. It will have a case that is actually a beautiful piece of furniture, of decoration. I'm not sure which case is going to be, but I know that there's a lot of them, or maybe something an open case, because those are very cool as well. Those are hella cool, and I just like that because it looks cool. You know, I'm a techie. I love displaying this shit. It's either going to be a very design-oriented or a very tech-oriented case. Either or. So it's going to look good. At the end of the day, it's going to look great. And I want it fanless because I don't like the noise. My fridge makes enough noise already, so I don't like the noise. It's going to be fanless, both on the CPU and in the PSU. So what do you call that? The power supply? Power supply. Yeah, that's what you call it. The power supply is going to be fanless, which are a bit more expensive, but yeah, whatever. That's the dream build, right? That's the dream build. Am I right? AMD's something that AMD's lineup is so confusing, though. God damn, they are so confusing. AMD something that I don't need anything super powerful, right? I don't need anything extra powerful. I just need something that uses a small amount of electricity because it's going to be on 24/7, and electricity is expensive where I live for some reason. I don't know why. And AMD build, Ryzen 3, Ryzen 5, don't need anything more. Unless I maybe realize that, hey, I want to game on this. At which point, I would need a Ryzen 7 or something. Not super extra game, just like game. But I don't know. That's for the future. Probably not going to happen. And just hard drives for Unraid. Just hard drive on hard drive. Because I need at least 2-3 terabytes of storage. Which maybe become 4 with 2 in a RAID 0 configuration 4. So, that would also be pretty good. We'll see. It's going to be something very dope. I'm thinking something, it's going to be great. It's going to be great. It is going to be great. And then what's going to be running on that server is the most important part, where the Raspberry Pi line comes in, is I'm running Plex. On this, which is going to be serving 50 gigabyte 4K HDR movies to my Apple TV, right? So the server is going to be running Plex, which will be serving 40 gig or 50 gig 4K HDR videos to my Apple TV, right? There's going to be Apple TV 4K as well, but on my 4K TV, which is 4K everything. I've never actually used 4K in my life before. This is my first time using 4K, but I'm going all out. It's going to be 4K everything. And for 4K, you need the Blu-ray movies. The Blu-ray movies on Plex, because how else are you gonna do it? I'm not gonna buy them on Apple. Well, maybe I'll buy them on Apple TV, but still, or on Amazon, maybe. But the Plex server, I still need the Plex server. I need the Plex server. And it doesn't necessarily need transcoding of any kind, because the Apple TV 4K is able to play through Plex 4K HDR movies. No problem. Well, it might be a problem, but it can be solved. That's the thing. I trust in Apple enough that I know that this is not going to be an issue, right? The second thing it's going to serve as Home Assistant, which is also a very big point in this Raspberry Pi topic, Because on Raspberry Pi you can install Home Assistant either as a whole or in terms of it's the Home Assistant OS image. It's the Home Assistant OS that's running. It's not Raspberry Pi OS, which I don't necessarily like because I can't do that because I want to run Docker next to it. And I just don't trust the Home Assistant OS that I can run Docker like that without any problems. And I don't like that there's a primary and then things are running underneath it that are completely unrelated. I don't like that. It's not well architected. That is not well architected at all. So you can either run that, which is going to get you the full version of Home Assistant, or you can run it in Docker, which I did, and then realized a week later that, hey, this is only the core version of Home Assistant, not the full. So there's things missing that I can't get it up to work. That's what she said. That's what he said. Oh, that's what she said. That's what she said. I can't get it up to work because of the Raspberry Pi, of just the VPN connection that I need on there. It's not working. It's not working. Home Assistant is not working well with my HomeKit, first and foremost, or with anything really. So I need a dedicated something for that. And running all these things is on Raspberry Pi is very difficult. Running all these things to properly run, having all these things to properly run on a Raspberry Pi is very difficult. It's very difficult. And that's why the home server. It's going to be run on RAID for, as I said already, I'm just repeating myself at this point. Yeah. Another thing it's going to run is transmission as a seed box. Very important. Very, very important. And that's actually the only piece of software that needs a VPN, which Docker has been it doesn't like my OpenVPN connection. So my Docker on Raspberry Pi doesn't like my OpenVPN connection. For example, that's exactly one of the things where the limitations are. When I'm going to have Unraid, I can just spin up a VM for the whole transmission. It's a whole VM, whole Ubuntu VM, just for transmission with its own VPN connection, with its own everything, and it's properly isolated. Because I have the power, and that makes things so much easier, so much better. And then I can run Home Assistant on its own VM, properly exposed as well. Because Docker is good but even in Docker I could run it. Well, not Home Assistant, but transmission I could run in Docker as well. Not a big problem. There's more flexibility because you have VMs, you have proper VMs, and very importantly, an x86 architecture. Because ARM to this day, or anything Raspberry Pi ARM is it's an afterthought nowadays because everybody has home servers because they're cheap. SSDs are cheap, hard drives are cheap. CPUs are cheap. Everything is cheap. Everybody has home servers, and Raspberry Pis are not necessarily those home servers anymore. I guess that's my guess, but nothing on Raspberry Pi ARM in terms of Docker. First and foremost, it's not stable. It's not really there. So x86. What was I going to talk about last? Plex, transmission. I want to run a Pi-hole as well, which is going to be running Docker. That's very easy though, the Pi-hole. Although I've had problems with it, but that was probably the router, which since has been fixed. And then my backups. Oh yes, that's the most important one of the most important topics as well. Backups is I want to back up everything to S3. Actually, let me finish this episode here and then talk about the S3 backup in the next one. All right, get you there.